We are live. Welcome everyone to SQL Friday. This is SQL Friday number 91. Depending on how you count, we had a couple of canceled ones. We also had some lightning talks where we packed 5 sessions into one, but it's supposed to be number 91, so almost 100. The season starts a little late this year. It's all because of me. Too much work, some health problems, and so on. But now we're on. So we have a season with 9 episodes, and the first out is Thomas. I guess I should use. You live in Chicago, so people would probably say Grohser or something. But I guess
that's actually pretty good for both German and English. Yeah, so.
You'll pronounce it correctly when you say your name. But welcome, Thomas. I'm really happy you're willing to wake up in the middle of the night to do a presentation for us. The stage is going to be all yours. I'll let you introduce yourself, what you do, and stuff like that. You're going to talk about TSQL, and that's what's most important for me.
Okay, so I will share twice so that it's easier for you guys to see the thing, because the slides are really simple. Hello everybody, my name is Thomas Grohser, and I will be presenting 42 TSQL functions, and if the statistics are right, over the past couple of years when I did this presentation, you will at least learn one new one. You might learn 42 new ones. Yeah, so the range is somewhere between 1 and 42 usually. But it's interesting. You can let me know afterwards how many new ones that you didn't know SQL has. Thing is, and as a funny side effect, in most of them I will actually mention how many years or decades this thing is already in SQL Server and is probably not used by anybody. So I'm old. That is what that slide says. I helped write a couple of books, and I'm with SQL since 4.21. Yeah, so I started in 1994, and I will soon have my 30-year SQL anniversary. So that's thing. And I have one more slide that says the rest of the session is going to be a demo. So it's not 100% demo, but it's like 99.5%. We'll see. You can, I don't know how you normally handle questions or so, but if someone has something, they can somehow interrupt me or so. I don't know. I'm fine with that. Or we wait till the end and then do Q&A afterwards. I have basically time afterwards. I'm not time constrained. So that's good. So now let's find out how to stop that sharing.
Usually I let people write in the chat. If you're okay with people interrupting you, just unmuting, that works for me too. It's up to you. It's your session, Thomas.
Yeah, okay. So I opened the chat, so I will watch the chat. That's good with me. And let's share my SQL Management Studio window. Where is it? It's always to find the right window. Here we go. That should be it. Now has a nice little thing, and the chat is gone again. I love Teams. How can I get the chat back?
I'll monitor the chat for you and read it out loud if people have questions. So
that works too. Yeah. Okay, so 42 TSQL functions and a couple of things that are awesome in SQL Server. So first we need a database. So I chose that we have like a database with a little bit of a harder name. So don't worry, be happy. Database is the one we're going to use. And the nice thing is, you see that now SQL Server and SQL Management Studio can handle emojis in database names, which is insanely important. I also have like archive to disk or create the poop emoji, so they all work. You can see them here and you can work with them, so that might be happy. I used this for a while to rank like the code quality of my developers by adding emojis to the end of the code. It really improves work happiness at work when they see that in the morning. They see like a gold star and they're happy. So for this presentation, for this demo, I have to run a couple of prepare things, and you will get the script. I will send it, and you will have hopefully a way to distribute it so you can play with this around it. Everything is in one script, and if you press F5, it runs all the way to the end, except for the ones that fail on purpose. but they will jump with goes to the next one. So I need a couple of schemas because I'm going to show you. As you can guess, I'm already preparing hard ones with like spaces in them so that we can do. I will need a couple of test tables that have very, very simple structures. So it's like my column. It's only one column. So I don't like to present in AdventureWorks. I like to create my own database. So this takes a couple of seconds, but we're almost good. So create a stored procedure that we need to test. And this is very important. We have to set no countdown for the next one because we're going to use this feature that you can run one statement 1,000 times, like if we go 1,000. So this is going to run now 1,000 times. If I wouldn't have set no countdown, it would have printed a lot and taken way longer. And now we can turn it off so we see this again. So this is the demo database. I have a couple of tables that I just use in my example queries when I show functions. And I hope it's big enough so everybody can see both the code. The result sets are not really impressive because, as you can see, the data is very simple in the tables, but most of the time it's enough that you can see that there's a result set and has like 1 or 2 rows. Some functions, again, you might know, some not, and they are about half for maintaining SQL and the other half is for developing code in it, but sometimes they overlap. Yeah. We have to run the whole, and I of course did not use the right thing. So let's okay, so we are in the don't worry, be happy database. And if we call DB name without any parameters, we get just the name of the current database, which is very practical if you need it for any kind of script or you want to print it out for debugging reasons. If you pass in any database ID, it gives you the name of that database, which in this case is MSDB, which is always 4. Yeah? So it's basically just a shortcut when you have like you query from exec sessions where you get a database ID back. And in the old days, without that function, you would have to write this join, which is not really complex, but a lot of typing. Just using DB name with the database ID is, so this gives you the actual names, and this one gives you 2. Yeah. Full disclosure, the first one is faster. The second one is slower. But normally when you get a list of databases, speed is not your main concern. Yeah? But if you need the last bit of speed, don't use the function, use the join. Unless you just need it for one. If you need it for one, the function is faster. If you need it all, the join is faster. The second function is very similar, and it does the opposite. If you have the name of the database or you don't have the name, back is 8. If we count, that would be the 8th one that I created. And if you specify name, then it gives you back the ID of that database. Yeah. Basically, it's very good in queries where you need to specify the database ID and you only have the name. That is a very practical example. So I have 37 sessions running right now that reference master. Since I'm the only one connected, I'm doing a lot in the background. Original DB name. That one is a little bit tricky, and thing is, so if I look right now, my current database name is Don't Worry, Be Happy, and my original database name, which I connected to SQL Server, is Archive2. With this, you can figure out if someone used a use database in between connecting and now issuing whatever statement they do. That helps you to figure out, hey, did the guy sneak from one database into the other? Yeah. Or when someone does cross-database stored procedure execution, you can detect this with this and say, hey, you were actually from some other database. You don't run my stored procedure. So that's a helpful tool to keep people out of your database. Thing is, yeah, if you now go to some other database, use master, and you do this, now it says master, but I'm still, the original one is still Archive2. That's the one I connected to. Yeah? Sounds awesome. Problem only works if you specify a database when you connect. So if you have a connection string that doesn't specify a database to connect to, original database name returns null. If you specify a database when you connect, that's the original one. So all the people that just connect and then are in master and use it from there, it's less useful there. But for example, most companies I work for, I require them to specify a database name when they connect, because otherwise I redirect them to a database where they can't do anything. It is better. Yeah. And if we go back to our actual database, then DB name and original DB name are back to what it was before. So this was a little bit warm up. The next one, if you don't know that one, welcome to the world of SQL Server. You will be very new. It's object name, basically the same as for database. We can get the name of any other object that's inside the database. Yeah? So for example, I use this on the regular sysindex table, and it will give us back my table, all the test tables that I created with the primary key indexes that I created on them. Again, same as with database ID, database name, it translates object IDs into names, which makes queries that maintain SQL Server much easier to read and much clearer to read what are you doing instead of joining with sys objects the whole time. Same exists for schema name, because when you also want the name of the schema where the object is, in the past you can use the schema name, but the problem is that still there's no schema ID in like the index sysindex tables or so you still have to do the join. But anyway, it's still an easier join than you have to join two tables. Again, things that make your life easier. But it wouldn't be me if I wouldn't have dig deeper and found one that I didn't know existed when I created this presentation, and this is object schema name. That one actually exists, and all it needs is the object ID, and then you get the exact same result in a much easier to read query and much clearer what you want to do and present here. So it's object ID, and the other one, I think, much easier to read and understand than this one here. Yeah. So the next one is super valuable when you create scripts with TSQL, or when you create dynamic SQL to both protect your dynamic SQL and ensure that whatever names people come up with for objects, it will work. Trust me, I recently came along a product that created a database name, not the file where the database is, the actual database name that was C:\program files. They messed up in the installation and put the file name into the database name, breaks every script on the planet. No backup scripts work anymore. Index rebuild scripts don't work. They all assume that database names are reasonable. That is not a reasonable. Did I mention that it was 127 characters long, which is exactly one character below what you can have legally have? They can 128. That doesn't leave you any space for escaping them or nightmare. So quote name will help you with that a little bit. So what it does is we want to create a script that rebuilds all our indexes. Yeah? So with what we have learned before is we can do this with the object schema and name by building a statement like alter index, blah, 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 rebuild. Yeah? So sounds super easy. So let's run this. And we run this, we get this output. And on first glance, it looks like awesome. This could actually really work. And we copy this, and it's already here, but for dramatic effect, I always copy paste it in again. So if we run the first one that we generated, no problem. If we run the second one, no problem. If we run the third one, we will get an error because these red squiggly lines are really predictive. And yes, so what's the problem? That one of the tables has spaces in it and doesn't work here. So, okay, we know we can get rid of the spaces if we put the square brackets around it. Let me make this a little bit larger. So we can put the square brackets around it. So we read that somewhere in the interwebs. And we get the new one that has the square around the object names, which is not a bad practice, but we will learn that this will not work either. So we copy it in. I run all three at the same time. So the first two work. The third one has a syntax error near the keyword table. Okay, so what went wrong here? Oh, the table name that someone choose has a square bracket in it. So just adding a square bracket at the end didn't help. So how do I have to fix this? So now it gets complicated. And this is where quote name comes in and easily fixes all your problems. So instead of you figuring out how to escape object names, you just put a quote name around every object name that you script out. And this is basically when you right click on script, this is what they do it internally. So now we get back these three lines, which look very similar, but have one gigantic difference. It's that quote name put the square brackets around it, and it understood that this this type of bracket is a special character and escaped it. And the way TSQL escapes stuff is by doubling it. So if you have square brackets, if you would have one in the other direction, like this, you would have to do this to make it work. Yeah? It's like the single tick and the double tick. We all suffered through that. So now if we run this, we successfully created a script that can rebuild all the indexes, regardless of how crazy people name the objects in the database. Shouldn't be a problem if you are the DBA and you create the tables. You would probably not allow a name like this. But again, if you have third-party tools or developers gain the power and they can roll out and make their own decisions, you end up with at least spaces and sometimes characters, especially in languages that go above the plain ASCII characters. There is stuff. Quote name fixes this. So this is one that I really use a lot. Object definition is we created a stored procedure before, and object definition gives us what that stored procedure, the text of that stored procedure, is basically a shortcut for reading one of the system tables, the SQL text table or something. Yeah, and you can run it and use it in a query as well. Works really nice if you quickly need the text of one of them. Much easier. Object property X. That's a good one. And it can do things you wouldn't believe it can do. It's not just like that you can figure out if an object has a certain setting or something there is. You can use it to figure out how many rows are in the table. Object property X, cardinality. And it tells you 0. This table has no rows in it. And the other one has 1,000 rows in it. You remember there's one to go 1,000 in the beginning, we inserted the 1,000 rows. Yeah. Is this number 100% correct? No. But it's close enough to figure out, are we talking about a small or a big table? And it's much easier to query than to join the 6 or 7 system views that you need to figure out how many what SP space use does under the covers, which is like 10 pages of code to figure out how many rows are in your table. This one gives you a pretty good idea, and most cases it's close enough.
Do you know how it's working internally?
I think it mostly relies on metadata that SQL collects, kind of. And I think for a while they actually maintain how many rows are in a table somewhere internally. But that is not maintained 100% transactional consistent. So if you have a lot of rollbacks after inserts, it might give you a wrong number. That's what I noticed over time. And I'm talking about billions of rows where you see that. If you have a table where you do 1,000 inserts and nothing goes wrong, the number is always correct. But if you insert, delete, roll back, roll forward, crash while you insert and fail over to the other machine. At some point, something doesn't get persisted. I think it's one of the things that they maintain, but do not persist back into the database all the time. So if you have crashes and rollbacks in a mix, that will tell you. Yeah, and you can use this, of course, in a query. So give me all my sizes of all my tables. Much easier than what SP Space Use does. And another thing that property X can do is like tell you if it's a table, if an object is actually a table. And that's not just user tables, but this is now also how many rows are in the various system tables in that database. So it's always interesting to see how much an empty database has 460 things of something. So there is a whole Books Online page with dozens of variables, dozens of names you can pass in here, properties that might or not give you an insight. The one that I find most useful is cardinality, because that's one that I can't get any other way. Other ones, is it a table? Yeah, might be helpful, but this session is not about this one function. I have to go through 42 in an hour, and yeah, little homework never hurts. So same exists for databases. So object property X exists also for databases. For example, you want to know in which recovery state your database is. It's in full recovery. You want to know what's the status of your database. It's online. Yeah. So basically, lots of shortcuts to SUS databases. Just makes the intent and purpose, what I want to do, easier than querying, joining other system tables. Yeah. So very helpful. That one is the awesome one, because that one is not easily to get in any other way. Last good CheckDB time from my database. When did CheckDB work the last time and did not throw an error? So if you run CheckDB on a regular schedule, and the day after you check if it was checked yesterday and it's not, you know you have a problem, and you don't have to parse that file to find out if something's wrong. So this is a very good initial check to say, yeah, everything was fine yesterday, versus you should have a look at that file. So you don't have to look at it every week or every day or how often you do your CheckDBs. So it gives us back. This means never. We never ran a CheckDB. Why? I created the database about 15 minutes ago, so not a big chance to have it. So let's run CheckDB. Luckily, this will run very quickly. And let's do it again. I hope my hard drive is not corrupt. Yep. So you can see where I am. It's 5 a.m. in the morning, and we're good here. So that is very helpful and makes checking a lot easier. And it's very hard to find out without that. You have to analyze your agent jobs, and much easier this way. Column property without the X, because Microsoft likes to be inconsistent. So column property doesn't have the X behind it. Makes it much easier. Again, a whole page in system docs, Books Online, with what options you can hear. But for example, this my column, you can check if you can put an index on a column. You can check if the column has an identity. You can check, yeah, this is a column that doesn't have one. Yeah. So again, lots of options for it. Makes things. Most of this stuff you can query by joining system tables, but I find it much more easy to read when I do it this way. So this was a big chunk of what's mostly used for maintaining and managing your databases. Now we swap a little bit more into the development area. Parse is, you can it's basically the opposite. It's kind of doing the same as cast, but it's a different syntax for it. And parse by itself has not much practical use. So if I parse something as an integer or as a floating point, so if I do this is an integer, it will still not magically make it into a float. While when I do this here, it will do this. Yeah? And if I do this here, I think I got this question before, it then says this is not an integer anymore. If I put a .0 here, it's still an integer. So it works a little bit different than cast, because cast would cast both of them into an integer. Parse only says, yeah, I can make this in an integer without losing data. Yeah, so let's leave that in, so that we remember. I don't have to remember it next time. So if you put something complete garbage in and ask it to do something else, of course it fails. So parse by itself is a function, but it's not very helpful, because if anything goes wrong, it fails the same way as cast. But luckily, Microsoft, when they introduced parse, they also introduced try parse, which basically tries to do the whole thing. And if it works, you get back the number. If it doesn't work, because you put something in that doesn't work, you get back null. And you know, whatever you put in is not what you're looking for. Yeah? So this works nice. So if I do the date, I get null. If I do the float, I get the number back. It also understands the problem between Europe and the United States. So I live clearly in the United States, and my SQL Server is configured to run here. If you run that demo and somewhere in Europe, the first one will return a value and the second one will most likely fail. So big issue. Also a very big issue when you load data into your SQL Server. If people send you data from another continent, you might not be able to do that. And that immediately brings us to the next function, which is date from parts, which finally has a guaranteed way that works on every SQL Server, regardless in which language and culture and settings in the operating system it's configured. It's always year, month, day, regardless of what you do, and then it prints it out the way it's configured. Yeah? But if you would just do the string, it might run in one SQL, it might not run on the other one. So it's a little bit more work with the commas and the spaces to make it look pretty, but it guarantees you the right way. It also exists with time from parts. That gives you the time. This gives you what date time used as with the 3 digits. And now we will learn that this last number is the precision, how many numbers behind this. So 1, 2, 3 here means 123 milliseconds. 1, 2, 3 here means 1.23 milliseconds. It's not what you expect it to be. It's not 1, 2, 3, and then it adds 2 more zeros. It's 5 digits, and you provided only 3 of them, so we put them at the right, which is technically correct what they're doing, but it's not what normal human brain would expect. And the same goes for the maximum precision. When you do that, it's at the end. So the end specifies how detailed you are, and then this number has to fill in that number. Yeah. So if you want this with the full precision, you have to write it like this. Then you get what you want for, what you're looking for. Yeah. So this is actually this, and this is actually this. Yeah. So that is something that I had people getting issues with, and we had to, because some people just put 7 in because it's the highest value and then provide milliseconds, and then wonder why it's suddenly incorrect data. And you have date time 2 from parts, which is basically this plus this in one function that has an insane number of parameters with the exact same functionality for both date and time. So it's a guaranteed, this is in this place, and you can specify the things. One thing with all the date time 2 and the 7-digit precision, there's new functions to get the current date and time with the correct precision, because when you do a get date, and we do, let's run this a lot, you see that you only get 6, 7, you only get a few values, because getDate actually only has a precision of 3 milliseconds. So it will only give you back 0, 3, and so on milliseconds. With thing is, when you use sysDateTime, you actually get the precise date time back every time. It can still be twice the same when SQL runs on a really fast machine, and you execute within the same fraction of a microsecond, a tenth of a microsecond, which is not uncommon for doing a simple thing like print a text. You might end up getting the same, and you see it's pretty consistent that my machine can either do 1 or 2 of these statements within a 10 millisecond, 10 nanosecond period of time. Yeah. So with the next generation of CPUs, this demo might not work anymore because it will give a different number every time. So that's easy. So that thing, it exists once, gives you in your local time, and the UTC version returns you the universal time that never has daylight saving issues, because it doesn't do daylight saving time. It's the only one on the planet. Datediff and Datediff Big. The big one is the one you probably might not have heard of. The Datediff is a thing. So if we can compare this date to and calculate the number of seconds since this date, it's fine. But if you want to figure out the day Columbus found America, you will get an overflow, because that's more than 2 billion seconds ago. But the big one will give you the right number and tell you it's 16 billion something seconds ago. So that finally fixes the problem when you did like milliseconds or something here and you had a too large range that you couldn't do it. With Datediff Big, this is much easier to do. Another one that is in there since 2005 but often not used is, what's the end of the month? What's the last day of the month? This month we have a 31st. In other years, we have a 31st in January, a 28th in February. In a different year, we have a 29th because it's a leap year. And then we don't have a leap year. And then in the year 2000, we had a leap year, even if we shouldn't have had one. Because in 2100 we don't have one, and in 2200 we don't have one, and same goes for 300, but in 400 we have one again. So for all the young people on the call, be careful, the next Y2K bug is coming to you soon. I'm giving you a heads up of 380 years this time. And for everybody to be very clear, someone predicted the year 2K bug in 1968, because his database stored the year as a single digit, and they figured out in 2 years we have a problem when he changed it to 2 digits for 1970. And then 30 years later, the same problem arose again, and hopefully we now have fixed it. SQL runs out in the year 9999, and even with best medical advancements, I'm pretty sure none of us will have a problem with that. But our grandkids might. So the next one is kind of a management function, but I found it very useful to use it in development. So why? The original name for the original use for parse name is to split up the four part names that SQL Server uses to specify things. So when you have a linked server, database name, a schema name, a table name, it gets separated with these dots, and it's really nasty with substring and character index and all that to split that into individuals. Yeah, I know these days you could do a string split, but then you have to find the right row, and it didn't sort before 2022. So lots of things. Parse name is really nice. You want the first of these 4 part names, run it, and you get it. The first one is the one at the back, table. Second one, you get the second one, and this is whatever is here. This is not the schema or something. So if I change that, I get the actual text here. So it's not telling me which one it is. It's the actual thing. And 3 and 4. Yeah. If you only have a 3-part one, let's do this permanently. If you only have a 3-part one and you ask for number 4, you get back a null. But you can still ask for 1, 2, and 3. So it's not how many there are in total. It's literally the position. Is it the table schema database, and there is no server name. So it counts from the back 1, 2, 3. If one is not present, it's always assumed that the one at the beginning because of this. So how can we use this for programming? For programming it's awesome to convert IP addresses into integers because it splits this thing really nicely. And then instead of using 16 characters, you can use a 4-byte integer to store your IP addresses. That saves a lot of space in your database. And it just converts this IP address into this integer, which under the hood is the exactly same thing. People will always give you an IP. I think it's, there's also a trick that works very similar to get it back, to do it the other way. And what I'm telling you is not showing you how to do this because I'm evil. So what you have, I just give you, that's the function you can use. So what you do is you take the integer, you break it up into 4 characters, and then you can use the ASCII function around it to convert it back into the number. Yeah, so that works, but I will reserve that for next year's presentation, another 42 TSQL function. So if you want this as a demo, you have to ask our organizer to come bring me back. Format is the slowest way you can find to format your data, but it's very flexible and allows you to do a lot of things. But be aware, it's the slowest way of doing it. Everything else is faster. There's literally nothing format can do faster than any other. It's just very, very convenient. So if, again, you need all kinds of formats for your date because you want to print it out, you can use that. And it does like just the numbers, the 3-letter thing, or when we scroll down, the whole name. You can put the year in the middle if you want to start a new trend and make it even more complex for people. You could also do just the 2-year thing in the middle to really confuse people. And then do a 2-digit month at the end. So that really confuses people. What, the 22nd of which month in, or 2014, 22nd of October? What? No, not what you're looking for, but you can make it really ugly here, but it works. It also works for doing numbers or phone numbers, or if you need to put some characters in between. It's very flexible. What it basically does, if you want to know what you can do here, you have to look at books online for C# format function, because that's all they do. They literally call that function, and that's why it's so slow, because they have to transition from C++ to C#, where they borrowed this function from, and then execute it and come back. It's basically a CLR function that they provide you. It's not super fast. Where it really comes in handy is when it comes to currencies and all that, because that uses the system definitions, and it can help you format your stuff very funnily. So I live in the United States, so for me, this would be the default if I don't specify anything, $ something. Apparently, the UK is no longer part of the European Union, so they now have a fancy character here. No, the font I'm using doesn't have a pound sign, so that's why it doesn't show up here. Normally, on your machine, that would most likely be a pound sign. I'm just not using this. I use this font, so it's easier to read in presentations, but apparently not good for British presentations. Euro in Germany, in Austria, you write the euro in the front of the number. In Germany, you write it in the back. So it will take care of all these funny things that nobody wants to really research, but someone at Microsoft pulled the short straw and had to do it. Next one is a hybrid between managing and thing. You remember when we figured out what was the last time we did a check DB? We also can check when was the last time the stats were updated on a table as a function, stat state. And again, we will run this and we get back, oh, it was there. And for the other one, it never ran. Update stats never ran. That's a good sign why your queries are not working. That will very helpfully. So let's do an update statistics and then run this thing again. And now we did it at 5 a.m. in the morning. So perfect. This is really good. Like what you could do a store procedure that doesn't run when update stats is like older than 3 hours. You check that if it's older than 3 hours, run update stats, and then continue the store procedure. Is this a super ugly way of doing things? Yes. Will it make your stuff work? Probably. Yeah. So enjoy that. We already did that second run. Original login. That is a security thing that is both for administration and development. You remember when we had original database where I can figure out which was the database you originally connected to? This is doing the same with a login. This tells me my original login is this, but I'm currently running as TG something. If I now execute as SA and run the same thing, the S username will change to SA. This is what gives me currently my permissions, but this is who I'm actually are. So when I revert back, it gives back the old thing. Yeah, this is super helpful when you log who is actually doing something, and you have procedures that to elevate their privileges and all that. Whenever you log who is doing something, use original login, because then you get the actual person's account and not something. If you run in an Active Directory, this will be the Active Directory name they use to connect to SQL Server. So you know if they're coming in with their personal account, or if they're coming in with their service account, all this original login, they cannot hide behind execute as or some other form of privilege escalation they might use. So this is really, really helpful. Yeah? So for example, instead of checking if someone has sysadmin privileges, what you should do is if the original login they came in has sysadmin privileges. So if they find some way to elevate themselves to sysadmin, they still can't use that. So good. So next one is type name, is again a shortcut to get the name of a type. So if we want all the types of the columns that we have in our tables, we can use that very nicely. And you can get both the type name for the user type ID and for the system type. It will translate both of them. So it understands the built-in ones and the one that are built on top of the built-in ones, like sysname is an NVAR character 128. And it will understand that. Oh, that's helpful. Moving on. The next one, another security one. Hey, you always want to help from SQL Server cracking other people's passwords? Yep. Here we go. This one will most likely already exist. No. So if we select the password from master, we get back null, which is good. And password compare will return null, and this is good. The only reason this thing is still in here is to tell you upgrade to SQL Server, a current version. Password compare stopped working in 2016. You cannot get the password of a person anymore with it. Yes. This is so it doesn't give you the password. It just allows you to write a query and compare password with every possible character combination very, very quickly. And the problem is SQL is really good in comparing lots of data very quickly. So this was much faster to crack than any other version you could figure out and write. Yeah. Microsoft finally decided we're not gonna play with this anymore. It stopped working. And this is good. Yeah. I just leave it in to remind people, hey, let's not run your database on SQL 2008. There's a reason why Microsoft's not supporting it anymore, or 2012 for that matter. 2014 is the oldest still supported version in extended support. 2016 is the last one in regular support right now. Concat is very helpful in stitching strings together. Yeah, that's basically what it is supposed to do. Normally, if you put strings together, you don't have a problem. It works just fine with the plus sign. But if any of the values you're adding up is null, the whole string becomes null. This is just how SQL is defined. So you have to put these ugly is nulls around each and every parameter. And yes, an is null around the value null is a little bit funny. You could probably shortcut this to this, but I'm talking if you would add up variables. I try to keep the demo simple and not create 15 variables and then add them up. You can imagine this is a variable and this would still work, but it's a lot of code. With Concat, you just put in the individual parts and it stitches them together. If something is null, it just doesn't put anything in there. Yeah. It also can stitch together different data types, so you don't have to clutter your code with cast statements. But the result is always a string. So you cannot concatenate 2 or 3 numbers and kind of assume you get a number back. It's still a string. Yes. Concat _ Washington State, or with separator, WS at the end, allows you to specify a separator in the beginning. So if you want to create a comma-separated list out of these 3 values, this is your champion function to do so. Same as before, if you have null, it just skips the element with null and doesn't produce any errors or thing. So very helpful to do this. This statement here is illegal. It's not correct SQL. It works. I'm not saying it doesn't work. The problem is it's not guaranteed to work. So in any future version of SQL Server introduced by a service pack, by a cumulative update, or a new version, this might break immediately. It might even break in a current version if the query is very complex. What you're doing here is a recursive use of a variable in a set operation, since the order of the set operation is not. If this query runs parallel, that result set looks very different. If this runs with maxed up more than 1, this query result looks very different and is not correct. For sure, because each one of them will concatenate and then only one of them will survive at the end. And yeah, don't use that. Do not use. That's why this is here. I'm not joking. Yeah, there's plenty of examples out there to do stuff like this. It works, but it's not guaranteed to work. Yeah? And in large things, I have database systems with 20,000 databases on them. If you run this and SQL decides to go parallel, wouldn't work. Yeah. So for that reason, again, upgrade. There's a new function introduced in SQL 2017, I think. It's called string aggregate, which will do exactly what you want, but in a legal way. Works in parallelism, works everywhere, built by Microsoft, done. Yeah. You can use the names. And works just great. Yeah. In 2019, they added an additional feature. Let's use this one. So when we run this one, you get it in the order how the data is stored in the database. And since this table has a clustered index, you get on that column, you get it in that order back, but that's just random. Yeah. Let's say we want the IDs based on the alphabetical order. You can do so within that group, that string aggregate, order by name of the database. So now you get back database number 10 is the one coming first in alphabet, which I think is archive2, and so on. Yeah. Backup test is my second one, and so on. Yeah, so it gives you that back in the alphabetical order. It sneaks in master here, and then at some point, temp DB, all kinds of funny stuff. So that is very helpful if you need them in a guaranteed order. And again, this looks like it's guaranteed. It's not. If you have 20,000 databases, they don't come back in the right order. To get that back, you would have to do an group database ID. Yep. So that gives you a guaranteed sort order for this. Here in this example with simple data, the result is the same. If you have a lot of data, it will not. At the moment parallelism kicks in, sort orders, if you don't specify them, don't exist. Yes. String split is the opposite. Wasn't introduced in 2016, came in 2017 with the order, with the group by. But if you're on a current version, it's fine. It basically is the opposite. You specify the character you want to split on, and you have the thing, and you get the individual rows back. In this, again, the order, it looks like it gives you back in the order that are here, is again not guaranteed. In 2022, I think there is an option which I don't know out of my head. I don't think it's not just a one. It is, but it might be. Yes, it is. Lucky. In 2022, there's an optional parameter of 1 that then gives you the ordinal position of the individual value back as well. Yeah. So let's put that permanently in, which helps. So that is. Yep. So thing is, it works. I once got the question, will it work with tabs? Yes, it works great with tabs. You can specify anything that's a single character back here. Tabs, carriage returns, poop emojis, everything works. As long as it's one. And this is how I got the character 9. I'm ashamed I did not know what the ASCII value for a tab is. It's a tab. Difference. This is a fun one. This function is in SQL Server since 4.21. I pretty believe it might also be it might actually have been in SQL 1.0. And it gives you the difference between two strings as a number between 1 and 4. So let's explore and have some fun. So if you have an identical string, you get back a 4. So you have basically 100% equality. If you forget a letter, it's still 4. That's good enough. Let's forget a couple of letters. Yeah, okay, it's only a 3. So it's only 75% matching. If we go down to 1 letter, let's see that. Oh, we get still 50% matching. So if you have 1 character in there, let's compare it to some completely different string. Oh yeah, we're down to 1. So that's like not matching at all anymore. But let's try something else to be surprised, and we're back to 4. So don't use this to find people. The use case for that is, I know the person who wrote it, and he explained this. This was put in for a very big customer. You might know them, Visa and MasterCard. With this, you can figure out how much you can mangle your name on your credit card, and it's still accepted. As long as you get a 4, your credit card will still be accepted if you put your name in like an online shopping thing. It's an algorithm that figures out if something happens, like you mess up 2 characters, you split, you swap them or something, that they say, yeah, that's close enough. That's what you can use it for. Yeah, don't use it for anything unless you work for one of these companies. Don't use it. It's just hilarious. I've created 4s with almost nothing identical, like here. Yeah, I mean, there's literally 1 character the same. That should not be the same, but it still works. Yeah. That's what it is. Translate. That's a good one, but really hard to explain. So that's basically a replace function for multiple things in order. So what that means is replace the first open bracket that you find here and replace it with this. And then the first other one, replace it with that. So let's run this. Yeah. So basically this replaced the two types of brackets here with here. But if I have the same bracket twice, I have to also specify the replacement once twice. If I would only specify one, it would only do it on the first one. Oh, no, sorry. So everything you specify, sorry, my bad. Everything you specify here will be replaced on the other side. But you can, if you put it there multiple times, it will honor that. So only the first time you put it in, it will honor it. So even if you put this, like replace this with this, no. So it's basically a replace, search and replace for multiple characters. Unfortunately, only single characters. You cannot kind of find a way to do a sequence, because if you specify ABC here and then you have CBA, it will translate it to whatever is over here. Yeah? Nice little function. If you have a specific use case for it, it's really practical. I honestly have never found a practical use case anywhere where this would have made sense, but there must be something out there because they created it. But it's helpful. Reverse, that one has practical use. So what reverse does is it takes your string and reverses it. Okay, what's that good for? If you have a lots of like %s, like something, yeah, I want to find everything that ends with the letter A and S. To get that, the moment you have that like in your statement, all indexes are out of the window. So what you can do is, let's create a table temporarily, and put 3 names in it. And let's insert a lot of other stuff into the table so we have something. So when we now do this, and we'll find some, okay, so we have plain persistent replicas, and okay, we got super lucky. This is not a bug, this is a feature. I run a collation on that SQL server that is not Unicode aware. So Unicode characters in a compare get ignored. Therefore, this and this is actually correct. As insane as it sounds, that's unfortunately the case. If you change your collation to something that is Unicode aware, this will not match. Welcome to the world of collations. But if we run this and do a plan, we see that's a table scan. It's the only thing SQL can do. It can't use any form of index. But if we create an index on it, that has a persistent column. We create the same table and we put a persistent computed column as the reverse of the original column on it and put a unique index on it. And then do the same insert again. And we could now either search this way on the index, and we get a nice little index usage, and the same goes for here. So I can use both the normal or the reversed one, and in both cases I can search the like with an index, because I have the string stored in both directions, and SQL Server is clever enough to figure out which one to use. Yeah, nice little trick. You could do the same thing by doing a like reverse just on the That would not give you the result, of course, but it would create the same plan. Yeah, because it's finally a plan, but it could use an index, but doesn't help you. So you would have to do the reverse on both of them to actually get the result again. Yeah, and then, but if you calculate the reverse on all your data again, you're kind of defying the purpose of the whole thing. So choose might do your if or case statements easier. It's a very simple function. The first parameter is the ordinal number of what you pick here. So if I want to have my database IDs spelled out as words, I can do this by providing these words. SQL is not clever and understands that. So if I put in here, everything is messed up. Yeah, so it just understands you can put in any text you want. It's not actually understanding the text. It just allows you to split over. So it's, yeah, I put this demo in anyway, so you can have. So this is one, this is the second column, this is the third column, even if it says 4. And then if you specify something out of range, you get back null. So if you specify one, that's very simple, practical. If you have like a status field of status 1, 2, 3, and you want to translate them into different texts, much easier than doing a case statement. Inline if. It's basically an if statement you can run inside a query. So inline if 42 equals 42, it should be true. Then we can say same. If not, it's different. If we compare 42 to 99, it should be different. So let's run this. And yes, it does. Under the hood, inline if translated to a case statement. It's just easier to write. And it has the same restrictions as a case statement. You can only nest, I think, 12 of them. And it doesn't help you if you alternate ifs and case statements. It still doesn't get you over the 12. So there's still a limit there. But if you have to nest 12 if statements, you should question your data model. Unicode is basically the same thing that ASCII does, but for Unicode characters. So let's have a look here. Instead of getting the ASCII code of 63 back, which is the first half of that Unicode character, it gives you the actual number in the Unicode bitmap where this poop emoji is stored. If you deal with international characters, it's very, very practical to debug stuff and why it's not working. It will also tell you when you look at these bits, which of them use plane shifting and which not. So that's the reason why you might or might not get correct results in other places. If you do it for regular characters, it's very simple. It gives you back the exact same result because they are the same. Checksum. Very helpful to do a quick check, but only in one direction. Yeah. So checksum test, you can take a couple of values. If you change one of them, you get back a different number. So it's very easy. If you just want to know if 2 rows are different, this will get. You have the problem with every other place where you use that, hash collisions are possible. What this calculates is a hash, and you can create 2 rows that have the same values, that have different values, and will give you back the same checksum. Yeah, it's not guaranteed. What it means is, if you have a difference, it's guaranteed to be different. If they are the same, they might be the same. Yeah. So it's very good when you like do a migration or you copy a table and you run it afterwards to see if they are the same. If they are different, you know it didn't work. If they're the same, you still don't know if it worked, but you at least know that you have a chance that it worked, and it's most likely. Yeah? So you can use a wildcard character to compare the whole row. So for example, for all my databases, all what's in SUS databases, I want to checksum. And if I run it 5 minutes again later, did anything change? Yeah, very quick check. I guess, yeah. Checksum aggregate. So this works on one row at a time or on n columns that you specify or n values that you specify. Checksum aggregate works on one column at a time. Yeah. So let's set the table to specific values. Run the checksum. So we get back a checksum of 44. And then we change it to a different value and then run the checksum again. And now we get back 42. Yeah. So same thing. You can only use it if it's different, you know, the values are different. If it's the same, they might be the same. Problem with every hashing algorithm you have. And let me put it this way, this is not a very good one. If you have a billion rows, there's a chance you will have rows that will have the same checksum. Columns, usually not that much, but it could be. Row number, we're getting to the end. That's actually kind of a windowing function, but often you have the problem that you have like a list like this, and you want to specify an ID or a number for it so that you make them kind of unique things, and the function row number can give you that. The way it works is it's the function needs an over clause, which then specifies that you have to order it by this name, so that again SQL otherwise would give you a different result every time, and you want your queries to be consistent. So this will just give us a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in front of each one, and the object names are sorted alphabetically, and then this is the way we got them back. Yeah? If I would do so, the table Y got 123. If I do this with a descending, it now should have gotten the 1. Yeah. So very simple. Again, that the output is ordered is purely coincident. That is not a guaranteed. If you have a large data set, the output will not be ordered. Yeah, this is just because no parallelism kicked in. If parallelism kicks in, that is not ordered. You can also in the same go partition by some value and then order, or just you always have to order, but partitioning is optional. That is basically a group by of the row number. So if we run this, it's much easier to explain when you have some data. Let's move this up. So we go for all the types of internal table. You get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 till 36. Then we have stored procedures. You get a 1 because we only have 1. Then primary key, we have 3 of them. So this is very helpful if you need a row, a number for each item within a group. Yep. So very helpful function, usually very fast, and is very helpful. There's a lot more of these windowing functions, but that's a whole talk by itself again. And Itzhak Ben-Gaon wrote the whole book on it, so must be things. So the last 3 ones I will reveal like slowly. They're new in SQL 2022, and I think all 3 of them are awesome. And there's more, but I have to be careful what I can talk about and what not, because some of them are not officially announced yet. So stay tuned. So the first one is greatest. What's the greatest? 42 is always the greatest. No, in this case, it's the greatest. If I put in 99, or let's make it harder for the tool, 99 here in front, it should now return 99. So it gives you the maximum value of all the values you specify here. Super simple. Did not exist in SQL till it will in 2022. It's already in the public preview. You can play with it. It makes your code so much easier if you need the minimum value of an expression or of a couple of expressions, because what you had to do right now is you had to do a case statement with the expression, and if it's true, then return the expression again, and if it's false, return something else. Or so, yeah. Now it's just, hey, all these expressions, and yeah, if you compare 2 expressions, it was a nightmare. Yeah, but I can give like I don't know. If you had inline if ape, so like 1 plus 1 smaller than 2 plus 2. Yeah? And then you had to do, and then if give me the smaller number before, you had to do this. Yeah. And if it's the other one, you had to do this. Yeah. So these expressions needed to be twice. And sometimes in code that I wrote, these expressions were like 20 lines long. So you had the 20 lines and then the same 20 lines over here again. And now it's just 1 + 1, 2 + 2, and these two should return the same result. Yeah, greatest. Sorry. See, it even prevents errors in your code. This, of course, we have least, which is the other one. Why didn't Microsoft use min and max? Because min and max are already aggregate functions for your queries, and they couldn't reuse them. When they would reuse them, there would be some thing is because technically you can do a greatest of some column A and some column B. And if you would do sum of sum, SQL would be massively confused. So that's where we have this. Okay, so let's create the original demo again. And the last one, and we are pretty over time already, but that's fine. It's a nice thing about virtual things. Nobody kicks you out of a room. Generate series. We all know the CTEs that people came up with to generate 1 million numbers sequentially. Now there's just a function that says, please create me a series of numbers. Why is it not working? Because they changed the syntax in the release candidate. I remember that. Think this. Yes. So in the preview, you had to specify the parameter names by name, but then on popular vote, this was revoked, and now you can just pass them in. Yeah. The worlds of previews. So this is release candidate, so it works. Nice. So we need a series of numbers from -500 to 10,000 in steps of 3. Yeah. Let's do a more simple one. I need 10 numbers, 1 to 10, in steps of 1, and that will give me 10 numbers back. Yeah. I need the opposite. I need the numbers 10 to 1. I can do this, and I'm doing -1 here. Yeah. So this is super easy to generate a helper table that just gives you a set of numbers. There's so many solutions I have. My solution is I have a table with 1 billion rows in my database. So I don't have to recreate it when I need it, and then do a top 10,000 if I need the 10,000 first numbers. This is much more flexible and will be helpful. As you can see, SQL Management Studio doesn't really understand it yet, but there will be also a version of that will nicely color code this again. So yeah, that's it. 42 of the functions that we went through, and there's thousands more. So explore what. Yeah.
I'll bring you back next time for another 42 function.
Sure. There's the books online. I've never counted them, but it must be in the hundreds.
Yeah.
And even SQL 22 has like 50 new ones. Yeah. So, and some of them are really complex to explain. So I'm not even looking at all the statistic functions and things that I don't understand. But yeah, there's plenty of basic ones, and I hope everybody learned at least one new one. So it's nothing, but I know I learned a couple of new ones when I put this together because I was just randomly browsing books online and picking some. And I'm like, what is this? I've never heard of it. And there's always new ones that sometimes you read them in an example and like, what is this? I've never heard of it. And then you explore and you find out this is there for 20 years. But it's some of this stuff is really hidden well and not exposed.
I think my favorite is the object schema name from today.
Yeah.
I didn't know about it. I always do the join against sys objects to get the schema ID, and awesome.
Yeah. So I could. Yeah, no, it's there. I will send you an email with that so you can make it available to the group.
Sure.
I don't know. I guess you have some website where we can upload this, or some repository somewhere. If you look around, like at the SQL Saturday in New Jersey, that was a couple of weeks ago, it might be on their website if you can't wait for it to be published before. So
I usually publish the scripts and so on when I get around to do the video editing, but I'm lagging behind on the video editing, so I might just post it as an attachment to the. There is in Meetup, there is some kind of build board where you can post anything, and I'll just put it there so people can get it, or send out an email to the group or something.
Yeah, I email it to you today, and then we can think. If he does not post it, you can write down my email address, and I will put this in here. Big mistake, but hey, I trust the audience. And if you don't have it within a week on the official way, then you can email me and I'll send you one back.
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you very much. If there are any questions, also you can email me them, try to answer. Keep in mind I have a day job, so sometimes it takes a couple of hours or days to reply, but I'll do my best. And thank you very much for inviting me, and have a great day.
See you, Thomas. I'll see you in Seattle then.
I hope so. I will be there.
If you drink beer, I'll buy you something. If you don't, I'll buy you something else.
Yeah. I see a question here. How do you redirect incoming logins to go your desired database, DBAs and database? In the connection string, you can specify database equals and whatever database name you want. And then you can, there's no way to force them. You can force them in a login trigger. In a login trigger, you can check if they are in the database that you expect them to be. So if like you expect login A to be only in database X and login B only in database Y, you can do this in a login trigger by checking, hey, this login came in, it tries to connect to A, it's fine. It tries to connect to B, kick it out. Yeah. So that you can even prevent them from going to the database. I mean, you still, if they don't have permission in the database, it doesn't matter. But sometimes you want to do this, or the login trigger can also be misused to ensure that like a reporting software only connects to the readable replica and not to the primary, and messes the primary up, stuff like this. So there's thing.
I had one question about the original database name, which I didn't know existed either. If I set up a default database for a login, and they log in without the database equals or so on in the connection string.
Nope, doesn't work. Doesn't work. It would be great, but it's Microsoft, so it doesn't work. It should not be original database. It should be, the function should be named the database that's specified in your connection string. Yeah, that should be the actual function name. But yeah. And the reason for that is specifying a default database is actually a fairly new feature. It only came in SQL 7.0. It wasn't there before. You couldn't specify a default database before that. And therefore, that function predates it. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think the biggest problem is I don't like to put in default database because it's messy in a way. But if people don't, I don't want people to be in master. They shouldn't be in master if they're not DBAs, basically.
So what I do is I have an awesome way of getting them out of master. I set max stop of master to 1. With the constraint database settings, I set only masters maxed up to 1 and left everything else with the regular settings. So when they run the queries from master, they don't get parallelism. That usually very quickly gets them to specify the right thing in the connection story. It's kind of like you treat a dog. When it does something good, you give them a cookie. If not, you don't look at them. And that's kind of a similar training technique with users that works pretty good. So set maxstop of master to 1, and then if they connect to master and don't go if they run their queries out of master in your database, they get horrible performance.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, cool. Login triggers, I'm not a fan of either, because
it's all, everything you do with databases is a compromise. So you specify, is the overhead of the login trigger worth the gain? Yeah? Do I thing is, if my OLTP system that runs on the primary is really sensitive to blocking, locking, everything, it might be worth the effort. And if not, hey, and 3 days out of the year, the reporting tool goes to the wrong instance, and yeah, it's not a big deal. You don't care. If every time they do that, you lose 3 hours of business because everything breaks down, you might choose to pay an extra CPU in your server and add the login trigger.
Yeah.
So
cool. I'm gonna go back to some I'm not gonna say actual work. I think this is good. It's a part of work to learn new things, but something that actually pays my bills. So.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I will wake up. So that's my normal wake up time.
Get some coffee. Perfect. And get going. Thank you, Thomas, for coming.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed it. I'll let you know when the video is up. It will take a while, but I'll send you an email.